right, so I want to go over something I think it's very important, and that is one of the greatest threats to our longevity. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, and maybe on different platforms you can get kicked off by saying this, but SARS CoV2 has multiple proteins in it. Yes, the COVID creator, the virus designer, had proteins. And these proteins are very similar to HIV proteins. And so infection with SARS CoV2 is probably one of the greatest threats to our longevity that we've ever seen. Why? Let me get started with this. The HIV proteins that are similar and expressed in the SARS-CoV-2 virus create all sorts of problems, including inflammation, and the spike protein does damage to our mitochondria. The spike protein does damage to our DNA. The spike protein does damage to our glycocalyx, which is the lining of the blood vessel. So, like, this is a blood vessel, right? This is a bad blood vessel. It's filled with cholesterol, but it's not horrible, right? When the blood vessel gets like this, then it's horrible, right? Then it breaks open and it forms a clot. So this is a bad blood vessel, obviously. Try to get blood through that, you're going to have a big problem. The glycocalyx helps prevent the inflammation and the breaking of our blood vessel. So by destroying the glycocalyx, we increase our risk for heart attacks and strokes. I know that. I had SARS-CoV-2 as an infection, and then under 90 days later, I had a stroke in the right side of my brain, leaving numbness and tingling in my face and hand and leg. Luckily, I managed to escape that using TPA and red light therapy and hyperbaric oxygen and a lot of other things to help treat it. The SARS-CoV-2 virus is the greatest threat to our longevity. The HIV proteins in the SARS-CoV-2 virus allow the virus to spread in our brain, increasing our risk for dementia, increasing our risk for stroke. These proteins that are expressed from the SARS-CoV-2 virus were not natural. They're not there because Mother Nature intended to have a virus that could wipe out the human population and shorten its lifespan. That's just not the case. So, if you've had a COVID infection, you need to find out if you have viral persistence, consistent infection. And it's important that you evaluate that and get it eradicated within the first year before, like with HIV, it sets up shop and makes it exceedingly more difficult to eradicate. So again, I'm going to reiterate, if you have a COVID infection, even if it's not a bad COVID infection, you could still get long COVID and you could still have virus in your body that's causing damage to your body. That damage to your body accelerates your aging, and Dr. Murphy's hypothesis is that this virus is an aging accelerant. It accelerates your aging by 20 to 40 years. So if you're seeking longevity and you've had multiple infections or even a single infection, you have to have a full set of blood work. You have to have a full evaluation for whether or not you have chronic infection from SARS-CoV-2. The virus proteins of SARS-CoV-2, some of them are eerily similar to HIV proteins, and so therefore it can evade elimination, it can reduce your T cell efficacy in your immune system, it can tunnel, creating nanotubules that will tunnel in your brain and increase your risk of dementia. Well, how do you figure that out? Real simple. First off, we have no adequate viral titer in the United States, which frankly is unacceptable. And if you're a conspiracy wearing tinfoil hat person, you're going to be totally freaked out because you're going to believe that we're not developing these assays because we want everyone to die. Well, who is we? Well, whoever the designers of the virus were, right? And let's face it, we can say it now. This was a lab-designed virus. Number two, and really important about this is, we then need to find out how our immune system is reacting to having virus in our body. And so we're seeing a lot of people who have elevated spike protein. Well, elevated spike protein, you could have just gotten a vaccination and had an elevated spike antibody protein without an issue. In the United States, there is no, I repeat, no spike protein assay where we can find out what spike it is. It just doesn't exist. Lots of labs trying to get it, but again, the spike protein is one of the dangerous proteins that is a real threat to our longevity. Next, if we can't get that, we need to look at the immune system and our antibodies. So spike antibody is one set of antibodies. That'll tell us whether we have spike in our body and are making immune system reaction to it. And just like I said, remember, the spike protein itself damages our blood vessels. So it can take a blood vessel that has cholesterol in it like this and turn it into a blood vessel that has a ruptured plaque like that. It'll destroy your glycocalyx. That's a spike protein. There are other ones, NAF, and there are a whole bunch of proteins I could go into, but I don't want to bore you. Some of them are analogs of HIV proteins. And HIV will shorten your lifespan, and so will SARS CoV2. So we look at antibodies for that, but that can't tell us whether it's viral persistence or not. It could be vaccination related. Who knows? So I use nucleocapsid antibodies. Here's the problem. All of the laboratories in the United States are shutting down this assay, this evaluation, this antibody. What the heck? Why? I don't know why. I'm not here to posit that there's some grand conspiracy to wipe out, half of the population like Thanos with a snap. That's just not me. But what I will tell you is, if you're nucleocapsid positive, you've had an acute infection or you still have an infection in your body. And if you still got an infection in your body, it's going to shorten your lifespan. So if you really want to be a longevity insider, if you want to take hold of your lifespan, your health span, and you want to have a life well lived, you have to make sure that any virus that's in your body from SARS CoV2 is eradicated and that the damage is fixed. If you don't do that, you just can't expect to have a life well lived. End of story. SARS CoV2 has proteins like HIV that shorten our lifespan, that increase our risk for dementia, that increase our risk for heart attacks and strokes, that increase our risk for muscle decline, that increase our risk for a whole host of things. So if you don't know if you've got lingering virus in your body, you better get it checked out. This is Dr. Murphy. I'm signing off. Have a great Friday. Hope you have a great weekend.